Yoo-hoo! It's the time for package from China. Yeah, it's time for a package from China because we do have a brand new PC hardware going to be reviewed here on the channel. So stay tuned and let's go. But let's take a close look at what we're getting today, because we're having all kinds of different cool devices nowadays. And this one I find really intriguing. So this version comes in this very nice fancy case. So that includes an HDMI cable, everything we're going to be needing in here. I'm guessing this is the mini PC. And whoa, this thing looks really cool. We had checked out some of these similar products in the past, but they were like slightly different and of course completely different power. The way how this looks is interesting. You can see that there's a little bit of space between it. And I do wonder if this is going to be doing anything. I'll not switch over here, but let's do a quick overview later on. So let's check out what we're finding in this part over here. Okay, so this is also a complete cable having the option to have a portable display. I think it is IPS LCD display with a resolution of 1024 by 600. USB, oh, a USB touch. Okay, so we can do some really cool things with this. So that's also what we're going to be checking out, and we're going to be doing a full overview. Here's the power supply. And the power supply is just going to be 19 volts, so that's great. Sometimes you have these very weird voltages. And in here we're having all the cables like micro USB cable. Come on, who uses that? And of course the European plug for me, and short HDMI. I'm guessing that's going to be for the display connection. That's a long time I've seen these things. Oh, the tiny freaking cute tiny mouses that is still making these things. And in here we're finding the display 7-inch HDMI LCD display user manual. But of course we're going to be also mainly focused on the mini PC itself, because this thing does have like a nice weight to it. But let's see what's going on. But let's do a quick overview of the device itself. At the front we're getting a display, then we're having USB connection at the front when USB 3.0, USB-C, an headphone jack and an SD card or micro SD card slot. At the back we're having an USB-C again, then we're having an RG45, we're having a single USB, an HDMI, and we're having over here the input for the power supply. The first thing that comes to mind seeing this, more like, man, this thing only has one HDMI out. So if you want to have like a dual setup, that is kind of weird that they didn't have this. I'm guessing maybe you can use the USB-C, but yeah, it's going to be, you need to buy something like an adapter, but it's something interesting to check out. However, the overall design itself is similar that we have seen before, but also let's do a little bit of chit chat about the weight itself, because I'm really curious about how heavy this thing is. So coming in with 728 grams. Okay, it's not bad itself for a mini PC. So what we have seen before with mini PCs, we're having a nice looking display for the time, temperature, but also when it comes to the fan speed itself. And connectivity wise, where we don't have a lot of USB ports at the back, we're going to be needing an adapter. And as you can see over here, and this is just a smaller one, you can get yourself a bigger one, of course, have more USB port, but having an extra USB 3.0, and we're going to be using the external HDMI, and this way we can actually connect another monitor. At the front we have a beautiful display that will showcase the time, the fan speed and the temperatures. And for the temperature you can see this fan is, let's say, 80% spinning, and it's not like super loud. So when it comes to the mini PC, this thing looks absolutely awesome when it comes to the light up feature on top. They're putting some couple of LEDs underneath RGB. So far I can see there are like all of the colors of the rainbow, but you cannot really control it when it comes to programs, so far I know. And in the dark it looks even more cooler. However, it's not overkill or so, let's say, bright that it's going to be really painful for your eyes. But let's take a close look at the specifications. We're having over here the AMD Ryzen number 7, also codenamed Phoenix, with a max TDP of 35 watts. So this is the AMD Ryzen 7, but it comes with the model 8840U. And this is going to be combined with the graphics, the 780M. And I think this is one of my, I wouldn't say favorite, but this is one of the better chips on board for a GPU. So we have like a lot of potential when it comes for emulation and gaming. So manufacturer is XDO.ai. So the bus specs is PCI Express 4.0. So with memory we're having DDR5, 32 gigabytes in total. and it's going to be in dual channel configuration for the maximum speed. In total we're having 2800 megahertz of, like, say, speed. Graphic wise, this thing is going to be interesting, but another thing I want to check out is the stress test to see how hot does this thing actually get. But how about the temperatures? Temperature itself, I must say that I'm surprised how cool it actually is. So at this point we're having a maximum of 77.3 Celsius, and the overall value at this point is not getting really higher. However, we're going to be checking out some gaming and stuff like that to see how far we can push it and how hot it's actually going to be getting. But in general, I must say that I'm quite surprised. But how about the temperatures with some Cinebench testing? And you can actually see so over here that the temperature is 94, but if you're going to be looking closely to the package, here we can see like 95.1 in red letters, with a simple reason, because this is going to be a problem, because this is just thermal throttling. This is just to do with the overall, let's say, the design. But how about the single core score? So we can actually see with a single core, it doesn't like really perform that great. With the AMD Ryzen 7 8840U, it's comparable with an i7 7700K CPU for quite a long time ago. It's exactly having the same kind of score. But let's get into the multi-score. So you can see that it actually also performs not like great, like 2453 points. And yeah, it actually has over here an 11th generation that is like the i7 is comparable with, or at least it's the one that's getting really close to. And debatable situation with Cinebench, but this is actually what the scores we're getting when it comes to the particular model we're using now. But let's do a little bit of chit chat about playing some old school basic games. So if you want to play in Cuphead, yeah, you know, I've been playing these games on 5000 series AMD Ryzen, and these were just running great when it comes to, let's say, the basic games. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. But let's get into some gameplay and let's see how far we can push this device with some basic indie games. Also, a couple of them are quite, let's say, power hungry when it comes to the GPU. You would be surprised.
Here's a real high-class bout. Here goes. I can't.
So one of the games that was surprisingly, let's say, demanding was the Blaze Rush game. Of course, an older game, and you can see that I get running on crazy amount of frames per second. But this is one of those games that can be very difficult to emulate when it comes to some of, let's say, the older and the Ryzen devices that we have checked out.
Engage. Want a shave? Access granted.
Leave me alone, buddy.
So when it comes for playing these older games or indie games, these mini PCs can be absolutely amazing. We have checked out some 5000 series and they are like having a lot of struggle with some of the older indie games because the onboard GPU was not powerful. But with this 8000 series, we can play a lot of cool games, and this is actually where I use these mini PCs the most for. Bring this with to some friends and just have some old school party games. They will run perfectly on even the 1080p resolution, and you can always go into 4K mode if you want to mess around with these basic games, but 4K is of course a different other level. But let's talk about the GPU hungry games. So we're going to be looking into the Red Roger. This is one of those great examples. So at this moment we're hitting around like 49, let's say 50 frames sometimes. So this is a playable situation. And the reason why Red Rogers is like with particles and everything, this is a beautiful game and a lot of fun. However, if you're going to be looking into the specs over here, so you can actually see that, let's go to the graphics. It even have been set to high, very high. And in here, having the post-processing quality has been set to medium. But you know, if you're going to be looking at everything, it's absolutely crazy. And you can just tweak with this. And of course, if you're going to be setting everything to low, you're going to be having a way playable situation. But I think that's the concession that we're going to be making these mini PCs nowadays. It's just absolutely insane to see that we can just play these games and just play them, you know, on the big screen on a tiny mini PC. But if we're going to be switching to, let's say, a three-dimensional game like Tony Hawk Remastered, man, I love Tony Hawk, particularly like the first generation of games. But I've been putting it on, let's say, the 1080p in combination with the high settings, just to see how far we can push it. And again, we're going to start some tweaking. But I think like putting it on high, it looks absolutely amazing. If you're going to be looking at the frames per second, yeah, you can actually see that, yeah, it's going to be an okay playable situation if you're not going to be looking at the frames per second. But it's just amazing to see what you can play with such a cool mini PC. And out of the box, and of course what you can do is tweak with the settings if you want to. But getting into the game, you can actually see on the high graphics we have the option to play this on 60 frames per second. You do some minor dips here and there, but I think it's absolutely forgivable.
Looks fun. Give it your all.
Yo, think you can keep up with me?
But you can actually see that the game does struggle now if you're going to be setting to higher, let's say, graphical situation. So if you're going to be putting the game like this Dead Alive 6 on like low specs, then you're still able to play. So we do need to make some concessions when it comes to playing on an onboard GPU. But if you're going to be looking into three-dimensional games, you already played some Tony Hawk, and you know there are many examples. So if you think about it, this particular game, the Crash Bandicoot trilogy, is not only super demanding, but this is actually normally needing a dedicated GPU like a GTX card. And then even you cannot even play it on maybe the high graphics, or maybe you can just... But if you think about it, you can just actually play the game on an onboard CPU, GPU combination, and just have like a lot of fun. But get into the game and let's see how much frames per second we actually can have with now. So when it comes to playing on some PlayStation Portable, you can actually see that with this chipset we do have more than enough power to run this on 10 times the freaking resolution and only using 60% of the GPU. But let's move to some other games to see how they will run on this mini PC.
Mines. Rockets.
But let's move to the PlayStation 3, and with a machine like this we can do a lot of cool things. So let's get into some gameplay and let's see how the overall, let's say, gameplay is. But with this particular chipset we can also do some 4K emulation PlayStation 2, but also when it comes for GameCube. So with the Dolphin emulator we have some amazing performance. I think as from the 7000 Series 2 we have the same kind of GPU on board, and I really love the 780M because the thing is powerful enough to actually run 4K emulation with some GameCube. Okay, there's a clear moment that you can actually see that it struggles big time. So what we're going to be doing, we can actually play a little bit more if you want to, but it's like a fun thing to do. So let's start tweaking with this. So let's go to the option graphical settings, and let's go to the let's put them on 1080p for this particular game. All right, let's go. Let's put it back in the game. I don't even going to be rebooting, but sometimes it will have an overall better experience if you're going to be doing this the kind of thing. Messing with just the settings will make a big difference.
Fight!
But opening up is quite simple because you need only remove 4 screws over here. Then we can just lift out this piece of metal and we can just slide it out like that. And this wheel gives us a look in the inside and what is going on. So first of all, the RGB lighting that we have seen before is actually 2 PCBs at the top over here. They are replaceable, which you can just see with the wire. So if something breaks down and they actually have some replacement, you can just swap them out fairly easy. There's also the same construction when it comes to the PCBs, and in particular when it comes to the Zulu that we have reviewed here on the channel. But underneath we're finding over here the storage capacity, and there is only one of them in here, so there's a little bit of a downside, or at least, yeah, this is what we're getting when it comes to that. So if you want to replace it, we cannot put an extra one in here. If you need to remove the piece of plastic over here, that can be done fairly easy over here. On both sides we're having parkers, and this way we can just completely remove the bracket on top. But the construction itself is so much better than the Zulu one that I've reviewed. I mean, there is no ribbon cable nightmare so far I can see. So I'm very glad with it. So because if you're going to be needing to, let's say, the removing or replacing of the backup battery over here, you need to do a little bit of a teardown. So it's not like super easy to reach in. But beside that, the construction is clearly better than the first one, or at least the first generation of these things that we have seen before. The Pantera 2 is absolutely an awesome piece of equipment. However, there are some positive but also, of course, a little bit of a negative sides to it. So let's do a little bit of chit-chat about the negative to begin with. To begin with, at the front we're only having a handful of connections. A USB-C, and USB 3.0, headphone jack out, and a micro SD card input slot. I think it's a little bit of a downside. I wish I had like more normal USB ports at least. But surprisingly also, we have the same situation at the back over here. We're only having one HDMI out, and of course we can connect an adapter of the USB-C and connect another monitor there. But still, we have some limitation, also only one USB port, so we need to have like an external adapter that also utilizes a USB hub. And this way we have more ports, so it is an option, but again, like plug and play, you need a hub, and I think that's a little bit of a downside. Performance-wise, this thing doesn't disappoint. Where it's comparable with other like 7000, 8000 series mini PCs, this thing has a very tiny format, and of course with the heat, I must say it heats up a little bit faster than normal due of this size. But that's one of the concessions that we're going to be needed to make. If you're going to be playing some games with the onboard chip, yeah, you can actually do that, and even some emulation. So for this tiny machine, it's absolutely a beast for gaming, and also when it comes to playing emulation itself. Let me know in the comments what do you think of this. Thank you all for watching. It would be great to subscribe, so hit the little bell, and it would be great to see you in the next video.